Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope you're having a great morning. Ah, Sitting out here enjoying the morning with Luna, having a cup of coffee. I like a little coffee to get my morning started. You might have something else that gets your morning started. I've heard different people do things like getting lots of sun and a little bit more um, things that happen in the morning, a little fresh air, sunshine. Um, Everybody's got a little different approach. Mine's a cup of coffee and a morning walk with my puppy dog Luna. Oh, so I told you that system-wise, we're going to talk a little bit more stuff that's personal. And I was able to think of something that's big system-wise and a little bit personal too. So one of the things that we're dealing with in our society is we have a lot of voices. Um, Social media has allowed tons of people to chime in and talk. Uh, some of them um, very knowledgeable in their fields with degrees. Some people without degrees but are very knowledgeable. Um, there's an author that I enjoy reading. His name's Peter Zion, and he writes about geopolitics. His focus is on geography and uh, shoot, what do you call it? The dynamics of the population. Uh, Hold on a second. Luna's lost her ball under the table here. She wants me to crawl, crawl, crawl to get it. I got it. All right. Sorry for that interruption. Courtesy of Luna. Oh, no. Hey, Luna. It went under here. You got to get it. Okay. So, anyways, so he has those two areas. One of the knocks against him is that he doesn't have as advanced degrees as some of the other people, which is funny. They don't knock him on what he's saying, because what he's saying, you can check it out, and they knock him pretty much on, how many years he's been in academia. He's been more of a consultant and has worked with strategic analysis companies, but he's not been in academia as much. It's interesting because we we're trying to figure out in this day and age, especially, how can we filter it down to people we should listen to more. The problem is that some of the people in academia are, uh, I'm going to say this is kind of ugly, but they're a little bit shy about um, pushing back if people don't, uh, if they embellish something. That there's a lot of people that embellish things based on whether or not they have a certain political leaning or social leaning, and the historians are notoriously bad at pushing back against those people. They don't want to upset people, so they're very mild mannered, which can be bad because you can have a lot of people that unfortunately change history to their benefit. So that's the system problem that I'm seeing. So you're saying, okay, Glenn, you said you would do something personal now. So now I'm going to do the personal part. My dad was part of an important piece of history, and I'm going to tell you what he said. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to my dad. He was not an academic. And Luna, I can't get to it. Get the ball. And he was not an academic. He was a soldier in World War II. He was in the military. He was a paratrooper, jumped into Normandy, 101st Airborne Division. Uh, he was quick. I have to throw this. Hold on. He was quick to let me know he was not in the Battle of the Bulge. He was on vacation. They were giving him some time off, some R&R. But he did tell me that one of the reasons why the Battle of the Bulge was uh, unsuccessful for the Germans was a lot of the veterans were on vacation. He says, because if a tank came over that hill, I would be like, I surrender. I'm a paratrooper. I'm not taking on a tank. But he said a lot of the new guys uh, said, I don't know, just dig in and take on the tank. And so they did. So, um, but that's not the part of the history that I wanted to convey to you that he had told me about. So my dad had told me lots of experiences um, that were, things that he liked and things that he didn't like. He actually didn't talk a lot about war because he didn't think we should. And the main reason he thought didn't want to do that had a lot to do with the fact that he thought that war was a horrible, horrible thing, and that we do it because we have to, and once it's done, it's what we fought a war over is more the life we're leading. So he was much he I don't want to get the impression that he rambled on about war quite a bit. It was rare when he would share stuff with me. But one time I was talking with him, and I usually we talk with my friends and stuff like that, and we asked him to share the hardest thing he had to do in World War II. Given the fact that he was a paratrooper, he had jumped in Normandy. He was part of the when Patton's troops got um, their war material was reduced, and they were not able to make the typical increases. His paratrooping um, group. Well, okay, let me just tell you. It's just let me take a minute to color this correctly because I don't want to tell you something wrong. So he said that when they first came in, he was a sergeant, and they after they jumped into Normandy, after that they had this pattern. They would jump and then fight their way back to the front lines. So the jumps were planned the night before. So they would meet up and talk about the terrain and where they were going to go, fallback plans, all that kind of stuff before they went and did their jump, and then they would fight back. So he said it wasn't unusual for him and his men to do a jump, and when they jumped in the morning, because they would jump at dawn, because they wanted as little light as possible. They didn't want to get picked out of the sky and by the Germans. So they would do it very early in dawn, and they would come down, and there was Patton's armored division rolling through. And he said it was the people would wave at him saying, "Hey, nice day for a nice little jump." What are you guys doing? A little training? I know we're supposed to be a couple of miles behind the German lines. So, anyways, him and the other sergeants eventually developed a pattern. Well, if we're here, Patton's going to be here by the next morning, so we need to jump here. So they didn't tell him and uh, his group when they got the material removed, where they lost their fuel and munitions, so they couldn't move forward. So when my dad said that typically they like to jump about 5 miles back and then fight back to the firing line. So when they jumped, they were 15 to 20 miles behind enemy lines, and he had to fight back. And he said half the men died because of that, because of communication. And he says we weren't it part of their division, and the communication just all they had to do was come across and tell us. We could have planned accordingly, but nobody told us. And so he said a lot of my guys died. And so we thought that may have been the hardest thing. And but that's not the story I'm about to tell you. You want me to get it? All right, hold on. Let me get. She likes me crawling on the ground today. Uh, she's doing a good job of having me uh, crawl, crawl. Ugh. So anyway, so when we asked him what was the hardest thing that happened in the war, he thought about it, and he told me this story. Said that when they started actually getting into the German part of the uh, fights, where they were actually in different parts of Germany, I came across a town. He said it was pretty much deserted as far as the military, German military, but it had some civilians there. But then he said there was this area, and he didn't. He said, "Oh, look, a prisoner of war camp." So they went over to it, and he's like, "This has got women and children, and they look like they haven't been fed well. This is weird." So he calls back to command and tells them what he sees. He describes it in detail, and I don't remember if he said he did or somebody did it. I think somebody did. He I don't think he personally did it, but he was there since he was a sergeant to find uh, get the orders. So command, when the description is, we've got civilians in a barbed wire uh, prisoner camp that look like they're malnourished and stuff. Well, command says, well, let them go. I mean, that's ridiculous. So they let him go. Now, at command, that was the initial people, right? At command, they went out and started telling the other parts of command the story about what was going on. And eventually it got to psychiatrists. And the psychiatrists were like, uh, yes, you bumped in my knee. So the psychiatrists were like calling back and getting detailed descriptions of what was going on. And they said, these are people that they have interred for some reason, and They are, it sounds like they were very hungry, they had been malnourished, and they were mistreated. So the psychiatrist said they don't, was a bad practice to let them go. What should have happened, what we need to do is you need to keep them, don't change their environment, but feed them and start counseling with them saying it's over. You're we're not nobody's going to hurt you here. It's we're going to feed you, we're going to take care of you. Whatever was going on before is not going to happen going forward. It has stopped. So what would do we do with all the people that are out there? My dad said that was the hardest part of his job, or the hardest part of World War II for him. They told him go get him and put him back in. He said he has never in his life done anything harder than taking those people and putting them back in that camp. He said, son, the look on their faces, the fear in their faces, as me and my men were taking them and in many cases almost dragging them back into the camps was horrible. We were doing what we were told to do. And he said, you know, it probably was the right thing to do, but it was a job your dad hated doing. So some of the times where we, to me, one of the key things about that was we don't know, when we look back at history, we don't know what people knew when they were dealing with uh, a situation. Um, we judge people sometimes based on, well, that was a horrible thing they were supporting, or what they did led to this, which was horrible. They should have known better. That's not always the case. My dad and his group did not know what they were facing when they found that uh, it's the Jewish camps there. They didn't know about it. They didn't know what they were seeing. They didn't know why they were seeing it. They didn't know what was going on. It was all very new for them. Oh, you're going to pick it up? Not going to let me do it. Okay. It was quite a bit later that he was made aware of all the horrible things that had happened during the Holocaust. But a lot of things hadn't really made it to the people that were fighting on the front lines. So let's keep that in mind. I actually oftentimes tell my children, they ask why people acted certain ways, and I said, you weren't there. You know, it's kind of easy to understand what we do, have understand right now, but when you were there, what you saw is different from what we know. So keep that in mind when you're listening to history and going through the things of history. When the people that deal with things, don't judge them too harshly. Wow. Thank you, Luna. That was her ass hitting the camera. Uh, yes, your butt hit the camera. Wow. Yes, silly girl. Yes, you're a silly girl. So, all right. I've been talking enough. I didn't apply any empathy to that because, hey, if you don't have any empathy for those poor people that suffered in that environment, I I feel empathy for you because that was something I hope never ever happens again. I hope and I pray that it never does. Like Luna. All right, you guys have a wonderful morning, and we will talk to you later.